Guys, I'm scared my grandma's gonna get COVID. What do I do?
Well, there are some vaccines that your grandma can take to prevent COVID.
Welcome to our 5th episode, which is going to be about the different COVID vaccines. I'm Shanti.
I'm Serena.
I'm Ellen.
And I'm Sharvi.
So you might be wondering, what actually is COVID-19? Obviously, we've all lived through it, and it was a very big deal in a part of our lives for around 2 or 3 years. But scientifically, COVID-19 is a virus, which means that it is a tiny infectious agent and it only replicates inside the cells of a living organism, which means it's like a tiny infectious agent that when it becomes or gets into a person, it replicates inside the cell. So it kind of needs a living organism to survive.
So there's 2 main vaccines, which are the Moderna and the Pfizer ones, and they both kind of work in the same general way, which is that the vaccine contains mRNA, which enters your cells and instructs your cells to produce copies of a spike protein, which is found on the surface of the COVID virus. However, this spike protein isn't actually the COVID virus itself, and it doesn't infect you. So your immune system recognizes the spike protein as a foreign substance, and it produces antibodies and activates T cells to respond. And T cells are a type of white blood cell that help your immune system fight germs and protect you from disease. And then after the spike protein has been created, your immune system is now able to remember how to fight the virus. So if you ever would get sick or get exposed to the virus later on, your body will automatically be able to recognize the virus, and it could eliminate it before it causes severe illness.
And so a little bit more in depth about these vaccines. The Pfizer and the Moderna are the same type. They're the mRNA vaccines. And let me go through the 6 steps of how it works. So first there's the injection, where the vaccine is injected into the muscle of the upper arm, and it has messenger RNA, so mRNA, encased in lipid nanoparticles for protection and delivery into cells. And then step 2 is cell entry, where lipid nanoparticles fuse with muscle cell membranes, and that basically allows the mRNA to enter the cytoplasm. But one important part is that the mRNA does not enter the nucleus, which means it does not affect DNA. And then step 3 is the part Shanti was talking about, the spike protein production, where inside the cytoplasm, ribosomes read the mRNA, and then they translate it into a viral spike protein, which mimics the virus's surface. And only a harmless fragment of the spike protein is made, so it's not the full virus. Step 4 is the immune system activation, where the spike protein is displayed on the cell's surface using MHC1 and MHC2 molecules, and it's detected by helper T cells, CD4+, which stimulate B cells to make antibodies, and it's also detected by cytotoxic T cells, CD8+, which prepare to kill infected cells. And then step 5 is immune memory formation, where memory B cells are created to produce antibodies if re-exposed, and memory T cells are created to kill infected cells faster in the future. And then the last step is mRNA degradation, and that's after translation, the mRNA is broken down naturally by the cell's enzymes and excreted, which leaves no more trace. And then, Ellen, do you want to talk more about the protein?
Yeah, of course. So adding more onto the spike protein, when the mRNA does enter the muscle cells where it is injected into it, they use this cell machinery inside the cell to create a piece of spike protein. And this is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID-19. And after it is made, the mRNA leaves the body as waste. So the mRNA is only inside the cells to make that specific piece of a spike protein. And so through this spike protein, our cells use that on the surface, and then this makes it so our immune system thinks that the protein does not belong there. So it triggers our immune system to produce antibodies and activate other immune cells to fight, what they think is an infection, which is what our bodies would do if we were sick with COVID-19. And just adding on to mRNA vaccines, they have been researched and studied by researchers for decades, which really shows the credibility of them. So, Serena, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, sure. So the popular COVID vaccines include protein subunit vaccines like Novavax and mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna, like Ellen and Sharvi and Shanti were talking about. So the Pfizer vaccine showed 95% efficiency in their clinical trials for preventing symptomatic COVID. So for this vaccine, people may still become infected even though they have been vaccinated, but their goal of the vaccination is to prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death. So just like the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine had around a 95% efficiency rate. The vaccines were expected to work well against new predominant strains and other variants that were expected to become more common. However, the Novavax vaccine was only 90% effective overall against lab-confirmed symptomatic infection and 100% effective against moderate and severe disease. And while the shots are currently available, the 2025 FDA approval requires Novavax to complete further research, including studies that would provide information about whether the shot is associated with several heart conditions. And children over 6 months or older can get Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, but people can only get the Novavax vaccine if they're ages 65 or older. So Shanti, I think there was another vaccine called Johnson & Johnson.
Oh, wait. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Novavax vaccine and just talk about how it's different than the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, because basically for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, like we talked about before, that mRNA is it is used to instruct your cells how to make the spike protein. However, with the Novavax vaccine, the lab-grown spike proteins are injected into your muscle already, so they grow them in the lab and then put them into your muscle, so there's no genetic material that's being put into your body. Sharvi, do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll go through the steps again with the Novavax vaccine. And first, it's a protein subunit vaccine, which makes it different from Moderna and Pfizer, which are mRNA vaccines. And then step 1, just like Shanti mentioned, is that it's injected into the muscle of the upper arm, and it contains purified spike proteins and an adjuvant matrix M to boost immune response. And then step 2 is uptake by immune cells. So it's nearby antigen-presenting cells like dendritic cells that ingest the spike proteins, and then these proteins are then processed and displayed on the cell surface using MHC molecules. And then step 3 is immune system activation, where helper T cells CD4+ recognize the spike protein and activate B cells. And then B cells begin producing neutralizing antibodies specific to the spike protein. So the adjuvant enhances this process by signaling the immune system to respond more strongly. And then step 4 is immune memory formation, where just like with mRNA vaccines, the body forms memory B cells for long-term antibody production and memory T cells to assist future responses. And then last step, number 5, no genetic material is involved. So there's no mRNA, no DNA, and no live virus included. So it cannot replicate or enter the nucleus or affect your genes. So Shanti, do you want to talk about the other Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Yeah, so this is a little bit different than all the vaccines we've talked about before, but it still kind of follows the same general idea. So basically, in the vaccine, there's a modified common cold virus. However, it's been inactivated, so it can't actually get you sick. And so this common cold virus is injected into your body, and it enters the cells nearby and delivers the gene for the spike protein. And then as similar to the other vaccines, the cells produce the spike protein and your immune system detects the foreign spike protein and responds by making antibodies, which activates T cells to kill infected cell and creates immune memory. But there was some controversy with this vaccine, unlike the other ones, because it was linked to pretty rare but still serious side effects, such as blood clotting, especially in women under 50. And this led to U.S. health authorities recommended mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna over Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Yeah, and I think it's super cool that even though the different vaccines work in totally different ways, they both work to essentially build immunity so that people don't have to suffer through gaining COVID-19, or not gaining, but suffering through COVID-19. So on a lighter note, a little bit of general information about COVID-19 vaccines are that there are 3 different doses specifically for Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines, and the first two are 3 weeks apart, and the third one is at least 8 weeks after the second dose. And it's recommended that everyone 6 months of age and older should get a 2024 to 2025 COVID-19 vaccine. And just keep in mind that the COVID-19 vaccine offers protection, but it also weakens over time, and it's constantly evolving, so the protection from one strain may not cover others. And a lot of the symptoms may also be very harsh. So, Serena, do you want to dive more into that?
Yeah, sure. So for the side effects, commonly patients will have pain or swelling at the injection site, and this is because their immune cells rush to the area where the vaccine was injected. This causes inflammation, which is a normal part of the human body's defense, and leads to soreness and swelling. There's also joint pain, and the immune response causes temporary inflammation throughout the body, right? But it's not just at the injection site, and usually leads to aches in muscles and joints. Patients will also have fatigue since their bodies will be producing more immune defenses, which will take away energy. And headaches are also common as inflammatory chemicals called cytokines are released as your immune system is activated, and these can affect your brain and cause headaches. And this is all very important because although there's many side effects, the COVID-19 vaccines are still very important because they were so crucial when they first came out because they helped prevent severe illness, hospitalizations, and deaths at a time when the virus was rapidly spreading and overwhelming healthcare systems. Before vaccines, COVID-19 had already caused millions of deaths worldwide, especially among older adults and people with health conditions.
So, Shanti, do you want to talk more about the different types of COVID and how not all of them are the same?
Yeah, so I think Ellen kind of touched on this a little bit, but basically at first there was only the main type of COVID, and so the vaccines were mainly targeted towards that. But then as time went on, the virus has kind of adapted to be more resistant to the vaccine, and there were different types like Omicron, Delta, Alpha, and more. And so viruses or the vaccines are not exactly perfect because there's so many different types of COVID these days, but they still are really helpful to help protect you from COVID.
So the prices of the vaccine for Pfizer and Moderna can range from around $14.70 to $23.50 per dose, according to the National Library of Medicine. However, the prices of Novavax can range from around $150 to $250 per dose, which is significantly more.
The vaccine is built on past work for SARS and MERS, SARS and MERS, and then the SARS-CoV-2's genetic sequence was shared in January 2020, which enabled rapid design. The mRNA platforms allowed for faster vaccine prototyping than traditional methods. And then the clinical trials had 3 phases with safety and dosing, expanded safety and immune response, and then large-scale efficacy and safety. So tens of thousands of volunteers from diverse backgrounds participated, and it was proven to prevent severe illness, hospitalization, and death. And then after approval, recommendations are made by ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, and CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And then there's multiple monitoring systems that track side effects that Serena was talking about.
Yeah, so obviously we can see that the COVID-19 vaccines are all very effective and so useful for us. Thank you guys so much for listening to our 5th episode of the Doctor's Discoveries. I'm Ellen.
I'm Serena.
I'm Sharvi.
And I'm Shanti.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
A quick disclaimer, not everything we say is 100% might... A quick disclaimer, not everything we say might be 100% factual.